Welcome everyone to the Omniverse of Nick and the first crossover in quite a while with Jigsaw in The Walking Dead. Now, before we get into today's video, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the Omniverse of Nick so that way you can help me grow up this channel and get more awesome stories pumping out and just generally support the channel. With all that out of the way, once you guys do that, we should get in to today's video. Now, as I said, this video, and if you weren't already knowing about it from the scheduling of it, this is what if Jigsaw was in The Walking Dead. Now, 2 years ago, I touched upon Jason Voorhees in The Walking Dead and John Cena in The Walking Dead. My two lone crossovers so far. Now, we're tackling a whole different ball game with this one, with Jigsaw, John Kramer from the Saw franchise. What if he was in The Walking Dead? Now, with Jigsaw specifically, I took the measure of putting in 3 categories. Number 1, who Jigsaw would partner with in The Walking Dead, who he would be friends with in The Walking Dead, and who would possibly become his follower, apprentice, you name it. Number 2, who John Kramer would hate and want to put in a trap or kill, vice versa, and just hate with a burning passion, basically. Who he would definitely put on the trap list, more or less. And number 3, the most important one of all, what kind of traps he would use. Even if he were to use the generic ones, walkers and Jigsaw, that's a whole different story. But anyways, let's dive in and set the scene. For Jigsaw and John Kramer, whatever you want to call him, who he would like, it, on one hand, can be hard, and on another, actually pretty easy. Because you would think that because of the Walking Dead universe and the fact that pretty much everyone got their hands bloody and dirty and was at times a horrible character in terms of a normal human being, you'd think that he'd hate everybody. But I believe that John Kramer, even if in his sick persona and trap mind, would understand even through and through, because of how smart he was on many levels, that the apocalypse is literally destined to change people. But there are still plenty of people who he would be like-minded with. For starters, Negan. There is so much about Negan that replicates John Kramer. The way he presents himself, what he did, how he acted, the setup and stepping stones into his leadership as a savior leader. It all, honestly, would really sit in to how John Kramer would look at him. Granted, Negan by no means would be perfect for being partners with John Kramer, because there are still faults. For example, the multiple wives, the controlling of communities, half of the ways that Negan would torture or kill people, and Lucille especially. But those would ultimately be minor on some levels, especially if John Kramer were to not figure it out, which he would figure it out. He is way smart enough not to see anybody for who they are. But even if this were so, Negan would see plenty wrong with him too. Jigsaw is basically like Negan / the Croat. So it's like a hybrid sort of mix, if you get what I mean. But all in all, Negan and John Kramer would be almost perfect in The Walking Dead. Basically, the Croat is Jigsaw if he was in The Walking Dead, but that's more or less a side thing. Beta would be next. Now, on many levels, for who Beta was, what he did, how he acted, who his character was, you would think that he would be, like, far from the list of being part of Jigsaw's group. But here's the thing. If we remember Hoffman and Beta, besides their strength and how tall they are, they're like in a decent few ways, yet not as completely as John Kramer and Negan, which would be a nice touch to John Kramer remembering Hoffman or knowing Hoffman, unless he never met him. Next, Major General Beale. Now, I feel that Major General Beale would see John Kramer as a menace / a great way to represent A's and B's and the founding for the CRM's dirty jobs and, like, the high murder / saving the world jobs, if you will. Now, John Kramer, he would see the CRM for just murderous brutes wiping out communities on the flat. But honestly, I think that the way John Kramer handled himself and what he did, it would be like a 50-50 / maybe like him being 65% against them, but still agreeing with them on a level for what they stood for. Now then, number 2. Who John Kramer would hate. Now you'll notice I didn't put the Croat in the mix, but that's only because for a few reasons. Number 1, I actually forgot about him at the time of writing this project. Number 2, like I said, he's pretty much a direct representation of Jigsaw in The Walking Dead, with only like the trap feature. And third all, I really just didn't see a place to put him when I did think about him. So by the time I'd gotten to this part, I was just like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just kicking him out of the equation, more or less. But now to the people that John Kramer would hate. What you see here, this list of characters, are the rapists, abusers, and the general top of the list people that John Kramer definitely would be killing and putting in his traps. Then we get the other ones. The ones that are lower, but still definitely on the trap list and the kill list on John Kramer's book. Gareth, Martin, and the Terminus people, just based on the fact that Martin tried to kill a baby and they ate people. So yeah, of course they'd be on the list. Simon, because this was Mark Hoffman's one default, he killed without reason. And Simon, he killed without reason. So that would bring John Kramer to the one default that Hoffman had, which was senseless murder. So yeah, Simon would definitely be on the list. Pamela and Lance, for their schemes and the workings of the Commonwealth, they wouldn't be too high on John Kramer's trap or hate list, but they still would be pretty decent up there. I still feel that they would be targets. And now for the final touch. The traps that John Kramer would use. Now keep in mind, this what if concerns Jigsaw John Kramer alone. He had help with pretty much all his traps. But in this, he is solely going at it alone, which never stopped John Kramer. He did plenty of it by himself, plenty. He masterminded it. He just needed help because he was old and had cancer and was dying and such. But with his original mind, his definite trap expertise, and the fact that walkers could be used as extra trap expertise, bringing us back to a junkyard thing and variant walkers and everything, this would make Jigsaw ultimately the most terrifying menace in The Walking Dead. Suffice it to say, traps, knowledge, and the fact that plenty of people would be on his radar, this would make John Kramer, #Jigsaw, the most fearsome, unbeatable, and completely unstoppable man if he were in the show. So, in closing, Jigsaw in The Walking Dead would be scary, terrifying, and every other word that you could possibly put in to say that if anyone were to come across that individual, none of them would even come close to getting out alive. Most likely. Because, hey, Jigsaw did die in the Saw franchise, so anything could have happened. And I think that Jigsaw would prove that, especially in The Walking Dead, humans can be just as terrifying, if not more so, than the actual walkers. And that ends the one-parter of What If Jigsaw Was in The Walking Dead. Hope you guys liked it. It was definitely a very good twist, adding on a much more creepier persona into something like The Walking Dead. Jason Voorhees kind of fits that bill, except he was just a mindless killer. But Jigsaw, with his torture traps and the way he carried himself, I put him above Jason Voorhees in kind of some aspects, more than you might think, or like, I think you guys can agree with what I'm saying. But I hope you guys enjoyed nonetheless. It was actually a really nice touch getting back into crossovers, especially with The Walking Dead and Jigsaw especially. The next project will be my first, since this one was my first real Saw project, next project, if you guys have been paying attention to the schedule, will be What If Cliffjumper Survived? My first Transformers project following the Prime show. First, before the live-action movies. I'm not going to be covering the sequel to Prime, which was Robots in Disguise, because it's a crappy standalone bootlegged sequel to that show. Prime was awesome. Robots in Disguise? Not so much. So, Prime is going to be covered standalone with everything that it includes, because it's over 3 seasons worth of content, and it's definitely worth looking into, even if I don't look into Robots in Disguise. They did not do well with that standalone sequel, but that's just me ranting. That would be for an entirely new video. Anyways, hope you guys liked this, and you're liking everything else about the updates and everything that's going on. And with that, I'll see you guys soon for the first part to the Cliffjumper series. I'll see you guys then. You guys didn't think this was the end of the video, did you? Well, the Omniverse of Nick has a new feature. A sneak peek at what's next to arrive.
Back to it.